Having migrated the one asset into our project, that being the fox from the multi-animal variety pack from Marketplace, we're going to go through and set up a non-player character and have the fox as a non-player NPC or non-player character follow our player around the game space. And we're going to use a process similar to what we did for our biped character, in that we're going to use a blend space and animate the character with an animation blueprint, and then set up a new type of character called a character, and we'll use that to create our process. So in content, we're going to go into, let's go into the animal variety pack where we downloaded the fox, and in the fox folder we have the animations, meshes, and textures folder. You can open the mesh here, and you recall when we did the biped that we based the blend space and the animation blueprint off the skeletal asset. We're going to do the same here. So we're going to create a blend space and an animation blueprint for the fox. So we're going to right click and say create blend space 1D, and it gave us a rather long messy name, so we're going to call it BS1D underscore fox. And then we're going to open this blend space. We'll dock it up here at the top. And because we based it on the skeleton and we'd attached all those animations through the process to it, we're going to do the exact same thing we did with our character. And we'll set and control the animation based on the character's speed. So in a horizontal axis, if this is closed view, we're going to open it, and we're going to change the none to speed, and you'll see that that horizontal axis name is speed here, and you now see speed down here. And we're going to change the range, say from 0 to 100 to 0 to 250. And now we need to pick the animations that the character is going to move through from being standing still to running. So we can look through all these animations, and there's like the fox biting, getting hit. Let's see here. Oh, there's rest. Go to rest. Gonna keep that one in mind. Idle breathe sounds like a good one. So I'm going to drag out idle breathe and place it here at 0 speed. And you can see he's just sitting there wagging his tail now. And now we want to find a walking and running animation as well. So there's a walk, turn left, which we don't want. We will just want to kind of walk. Fox walk. So let's grab the fox walk and drag it out here to maybe a third of the way. And then let's find a run. Run, turn right. This one is run, turn left. Okay, so here we go with fox run. So I'm going to grab fox run and drag it out to our 250. So now holding the option key down, or sorry, the command key down, we can change the perceived speed, and you can see the character changing from walking to running. Based on the character speed. So that's pretty much the same process we did for our character when we did the biped. So this was the blend space. So now we need to set up an animation blueprint, and we're going to do the same process. We're going to highlight the skeleton, control click, say create, and we will say anim blueprint. Again, it gives us a pretty long name, so I'm going to say ABP_Fox. So this is our Fox animation blueprint. We're going to open it. And it opens the animation graph. And we're going to dock this up here. With it docked, we'll bring up the content browser. We're going to drag in our blend space that we just created, because it's going to be the one input to our actual render pose or output pose. And on the speed, we're going to drag out and say promote to variable, and it's going to create the variable speed for us. Uses Fox's speed to control animation. So far the speed value got initialized at 0, and we now need to find a way to control that speed value. And if we go into the animation blueprint event graph, we're going to find the same controls as last time, and we're going to run the same process. We're going to get the movement component. From the movement component, we're going to get velocity. Velocity is the speed in any one direction, so it's not 2 miles forward, it's 2 miles an hour in any direction. And then, so we're going to get the vector length here. I'm just going to say vector length. And this should give us a float of how long that vector is. And we're going to use that to set speed. So these nodes get the Fox's velocity and sets the variable speed. So in our mannequin blueprint, we had a jumping component. We don't have that here. We simply have a sort of idle walk run, and it's only being controlled by the speed. So our state machine is simply this value. Speed controlling the blend space animation. So we now have our animation blueprint and our blend space set up. We now need to actually add this non-player character or NPC. And to do that, we're going to use a new blueprint class. I'm just going to change to the Fox folder here. We're going to control click and say blueprint, and we're going to choose character, and I'm going to call it NPC_Fox. Going to double click on it to open it up, and we have our typical blueprint editing interface. We have a mesh component here. And this mesh component takes a skeletal mesh and an animation blueprint, and we just happen to have two of those for our fox character. So skeletal mesh for a fox is our fox skeletal mesh, and I can just search and get fox. Now if we look at this, we'll notice that the fox is floating in the air and that he's facing the wrong direction. So I'm going to go from perspective to top view. We'll zoom in here. And you can see it's facing the wrong direction. The forward direction is the blue arrow, the big blue arrow. So I'm going to give this -90, so it's facing the right way. Then if I go to a right view instead of a top view, we can see the fox is floating at the top, so making sure the mesh is the highlighted item. I'm going to drag the fox down so that its feet are at the bottom of the capsule. That way it won't look like it's running in air. It'll look like it's running on the ground. And we're going to scale it, making sure this is locked in all three directions. Scale it 0.7 so it's a bit smaller. And we're going to compile it. Now I also can choose to give it an animation blueprint here. And the class we're going to use is our fox anim blueprint. So ABP fox. And we now see we have our fox animated in the animation blueprint that we used, and it's just sitting there idle. So if I was in game, I could drag this fox in and put it in the space. And if we go over to play, our fox looks a little small, but he is standing there animated, but it is not following us around. So we need to do one more thing yet. This NPC needs to be told how to behave. So we need to program the event graph for this character, and we need to provide the bounds for it. So let's go to the NPC character again, and I had scaled this down to 0.7, so I'm going to undo that and just go with 1 at the full size. So compile and save. So we've been working in the viewport. We also need to create the logic to drive this character. And to do this, we're going to use an AI function in Unreal. Now, calling it AI by AI standards today it's not a very intelligent AI. This is simply going to move the character around. There are more advanced artificial intelligence options in Unreal, some of them based on behavior trees and other features. This is a very simple one. So we're going to get rid of these nodes in here, and we're simply going to use the event begin play node and a custom event. So we're going to create a custom event called follow player. So custom event, we're going to name it follow player. And we're going to drag out from here, and what we want to do is have AI move to, and use AI to move to a particular item. And what we're going to say is move the pawn, the item we want to move, in this case it's self, the fox, so reference to self. And where do we want to move it to? Well, we want to move it to our player. So we're going to say get player character. This should move itself, the fox, to the player. And this is going to move it partway there. And we just want to keep repeating this, so we're going to do it in a bit of a loop. So we could simply say follow player, calling this function again, and this is simply going to come back here. So we could put the line, or we could use this custom event that looks like this to do it for us. Now, anytime we do a loop in Unreal, I cautioned you that we should have some kind of a delay in there. It just makes the loop behave better and allows us to break into it. So I'm going to put a small delay in. And then we need to start this loop once, so when the event begins, when the characters spawn, we're going to call the follow player function here. So this calls it for the first time, and then this loops through and moves fox to player. So we're going to compile this and save it. We're going to go into our game space, and we'll see that it's not quite moving yet. If we take a look at this, we'll see the fox is there, but he's not following us. He's just sort of standing there. We actually need to add a nav mesh now. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit. And with it zoomed out, we're going to add a nav mesh. And it's just another volume like the other volumes that we use. So I can come down to volumes, and you see our first volume here is a nav mesh. It's placed it kind of right floating here in space. So I'm just going to go to a top-down view, F to focus on our nav mesh. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. So you can see here's our transport pad and our fox and stuff, and here's the nav mesh. With the nav mesh highlighted, I'm going to choose to not scale it equal in each direction, so I've unchecked the lock, and I'm going to say go 20 units in that direction. You can see it's gotten a little bigger, and 30 units in the other direction, so it's even bigger. If I go from lit to unlit, that doesn't help. If we go to wireframe, there you can see the extent of it here in the wireframe view. So our fox is down here, and this is the extent of our nav mesh. I'm going to go 20, so it's just a little square space here. And switching back to lit mode, you can see that it includes our spawn point. Here's our transporter pad and our bridge and our other buildings. If I go back to perspective view, I think we'll see this is still floating off the ground. And what I want to do with the nav mesh is move it down. And we can choose to drag down on the Z-axis here. And you can see it's moving down. And I want it to be just so it's just underground here. So you can see the bottom of the nav mesh disappears on the main part of the ground. This defines the perimeter for our AI to move the character. And if we use the P as in Peter key here, it's going to generate a mesh for us, or a view, and this dark line represents, and the green spot represents where our character can roam, our NPC character can roam based on the nav mesh volume. So now when we play the game, as long as we're in this nav mesh, the fox should come up to us and start following us around. Now, one thing that we're noticing is that the fox stays right on our heels, and it's moving pretty fast. Let's make a couple of changes here. First thing we can do is change this acceptance radius. This acceptance radius is how close will the NPC actually get to us. And it's set to 5 units. We're going to set it to like 85 units. So it's going to stay a little further back. So we're in the nav mesh, and you can see the fox runs up to us, and as we choose to run away, he runs after us, but it's catching up to us pretty quickly. So we can go into the animation blueprint again, into the character movement, and we can change this maximum acceleration value from 2048, which is pretty fast, to like 55. So now the NPC character is going to start slower and reach its top speed slower. So now you can see it runs up a little slower. He's actually having a hard time getting past our mannequin or jumping man. but it's running up at a more leisurely pace now instead of jumping right up to us right away. So this character is going to follow us, and you may recall that that green line didn't go very far up the hill, so this character, the NPC character, isn't going to be able to follow us all the way up. He's only going to be able to come up halfway where we set our there we go. We only set our vertical height on our nav mesh to 1 or 2 meters high, so that intersected the hill part way up, and now the NPC character, the fox, can't come up the hill based on our nav mesh. So we could make nav mesh taller, and it could go further up the hill if we wanted, and we could also expand the area for the nav mesh. So that's a simple NPC character that's going to follow us around, and it just sort of follows us and stops. It could follow us, and when it reached us, we could have it animate a fight scene where it's attacking us, or maybe it gives us a gift or something. There's a different animation, or you could turn it around and have the NPC go somewhere on the map, and it could be leading your character, and it would only ever get so many units away, waiting for your character to follow it. So a couple of different ways to do it. In this case, we've set up a simple blend space to control the animations, an animation blueprint to control the character's actions. NPC helps or uses the AI component to actually move this character closer to our player, and as our player moves around, this NPC character follows it. Thank you.